Finger point. This is the Sonic Truth Dynasty Focused Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky from RotoWire, the moderator of the Dynasty offseason. By the way, wait, guys, before I even introduce you, Theo, Gremminger, and Podfather, it says on I take objection with the Dynasty offseason label. Isn't this the Dynasty on season, Theo?
This is certainly the busy season for us. It's constant changes, constant reactions, and then we have the looming rookie drafts coming up. So this is like busy season, lots of trades in dynasty leagues. I'm fired up to talk to you guys today.
Podfather, do you like the off-season content better than the on-season? That's what I was thinking about the other day, because the in-season, the waiver wire, the top 10 takeaways, like I love all that stuff and it's fun. But for some reason, I don't know. I just feel like the off-season stuff, the projecting, the guessing what's going to actually happen is a little bit more interesting and intriguing to me. Do you feel that way as basically a volume content creator?
I live for the off-season. The off-season's my on-season. That's exactly right. I love Dynasty. It's my favorite format. I love rookie drafts. So, yes, this isn't really the off-season. Alan, we will update the overlay on the show. We're going to update the overlay on the show. We're going to make it better. It's inaccurate. You're exactly right. It's not leading anyone to get excited. We will do a better job with the graphic. Theo will help, right? Theo, you'll get involved. Theo's taking a lead role in producing our podcasts and our streams. We'll make sure that it's a better graphic for you next time, Alan.
Yeah, I wanted to say 2023 Dynasty season, because it's begun. We always say the Dynasty season has begun as soon as the Super Bowl ends. I mean, that's when trading opens up and all that other things. And part of values, and by the way, let me give you a proper introduction. I want everyone to go follow Theo Gremminger as I do, at the OG Fantasy on Twitter. Everybody follows the Podfather at Fantasy_Mansion. And you can follow me at Alan Seslowsky. And what we want to do today, guys, on the Sonic Truth podcast is I want to talk about a few more of the players that were traded or signed, because that really does affect. Trading has really opened up. I mean, I'm seeing my inbox flooded. So, Theo, you guys over at Player Profiler have CeeDee Lamb as your wide receiver 3. I was a little bearish on him, but the signing of Brandin Cooks, is this not the perfect wide receiver to elevate and solidify CeeDee Lamb's value?
I think it's very good for CeeDee Lamb. I think it's very good for Dak Prescott. I think that there's going to be a lot more wide receiver targets in Dallas, which is exciting for Dak. You basically go from having a tight end that he's very comfortable with in Dalton Schultz to presumably a Jake Ferguson second-year type, or a rookie tight end, or maybe a late free agent signing. And then you offer Brandin Cooks as a huge upgrade with the wide receiver 2 that they've lacked since Amari Cooper left. So it's very good. It takes some pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. And I think he's going to be very efficient. I think we are absolutely correct in having him as wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. Alan, I know you have another wide receiver 3 in mind among the Dynasty ranks when we talked last, but I think Matt and everybody else at Player Profiler, I think we're right with CeeDee Lamb. He's clean. The guy's immediate production. He was fantastic last season, and I think a lot more to come.
Yeah, I've come around a little bit based on this signing. So, Podfather.
This is all it took?
I was concerned they were going to bring in like a DeAndre Hopkins. That was my fear right there. And I can only go on. I thought that Dallas was thirsty. They know they effed up with Amari Cooper, and they were trying to bring in a target hog. Didn't happen.
I love this trade, and this move is great. It's great for everybody. Do you remember some of these throws, these deep throws from Prescott to Michael Gallup? And sometimes like it would be Prescott underthrowing him. Right. Sometimes it was clearly on Prescott in the playoffs. There was one where Gallup did have separation and Dak underthrew him. But this was the challenge all year, was stretching the field and creating room for the guys underneath. Schultz underwhelmed. And then you knew Schultz was gone after that playoff performance where, remember, he couldn't get out of bounds moving forward. He ended up moving backwards to get out of bounds. And they said, no, the clock still runs. And then he didn't drag his foot going out of bounds. So it was like back-to-back plays. He looked like he forgot how to play football, or at least at the NFL level. So he was gone naturally. And it clearly, the Michael Gallup was never that guy, right? He was not that guy at Colorado State. He's never been that guy, right? He had a solid season where he was the only game in town at wide receiver. That's it. So many wide receivers have this season, right? They have this season in them. DJ Chark had that season. They all have that season, right? You just can't go chasing that season in Dynasty. That's why we like to zoom out and look at their full profile. Was Michael Gallup particularly dominant in college at an early age, especially? No. Was he especially athletic coming out? No. Right? So there wasn't a lot to get excited about on the Michael Gallup profile ever. And then he does, the thing that you really can't do for NFL coaches, which is to lead the league in drops one year, right? Then all of a sudden now the coaches don't believe in you like they should. And it's not going to happen. So now they bring in a real field stretcher, a proper Z, and CeeDee Lamb is best comparable to Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice is the only player I'm aware of in the last 10 years that's comped to Jerry Rice is CeeDee Lamb. And for the first time, I think CeeDee Lamb has his John Taylor in Brandin Cooks.
Good old school reference right there. I like that, the JT.
I love that. And Matt, I think another interesting thing about CeeDee Lamb, you bring up Jerry Rice, him having a truly elite season this year, where he challenges for the wide receiver one in redraft, or, somewhere right near there, is the touchdowns. And I think getting away from Dalton Schultz, the red zone target that Dak is very comfortable with, maybe we start seeing CeeDee Lamb utilized more around the goal line and in the red zone. And I think that there's a chance that he has another year where he sets his touchdown record. And yeah, I think Cooks is a perfect complement to him. Cooks has 6 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Cooks is still under 30 years old. The guy has been very reliable. And I think just having him across from CD, again, with no Schultz, it's super, super exciting. You also have the fact that there's no pressure from the organization to force feed those Ezekiel Elliott carries inside the 10-yard line, try to get Zeke in the end zone. That's gone out the window as well. So I think it's really all shaping up for CeeDee Lamb. And it's just a tremendous week for Dallas and CD.
When was the last time Brandin Cooks wasn't the best receiver on his team?
Well, in Houston, he was.
Right.
Who else was with him on the New England Patriots? Who else was with him in the LA Rams?
Was it Cooper Kupp?
It was Cooper Kupp. It was Cooper Kupp.
I think it was Cooper Kupp. If we go back to Cooper Kupp on the Rams, and that was also Brandin Cooks' worst season. So this is not necessarily that great for Brandin Cooks. It's fine. It's one of these lateral moves where guy gets an efficiency boost, a touchdown boost, but his volume drops. So flat, right? CeeDee Lamb, because of the loss of Dalton Schultz, he actually goes up because this is going to help his efficiency, and it likely won't hurt his volume either.
Yeah, I agree on that one. It's for Cooks, I think you just realistically, he's a wide receiver 3, maybe a high-end wide receiver 4. He's going to be right there in that, flexible but not exciting. But it's more about what he does to the offense.
Yep. With Brandin Cooks, though, Podfather, he's your classic, 870-yard, 6-touchdown guy. Never know when to start him. His best games come on your bench.
Yeah, he's a best ball receiver.
He's a
cliche alert.
Cliche alert.
Get
it.
I hate it. I got a cliche alert myself, but it's also true.
Cliche alert! Cliche alert! Cliche alert! Cliche alert! Cliche alert! Cliche alert!
I have news for you, Theo Gremminger, right? Tell Podfather that everyone's better in best ball. Every single player in the NFL is better in best ball.
It's so true. It's so true, with the exception of the elite players you would never bench.
Well, then they're a neutral.
I don't want to get cliche alerted myself, so I'm not going to say better in best ball all episode long.
You know what else is going on with the Dallas Cowboys, guys? I think you alluded to it, but Zeke is gone. I never thought that would happen. So really want to ask you, Podfather. Well, no, because Jerry Jones a month and a half ago was saying Zeke is the face of our team. And again, it's not that we didn't see Zeke deteriorating before our eyes, just that we thought that for some reason Zeke and Jerry Jones had that like Robert Kraft and Tom Brady relationship going on. So is second-year player Malik Davis the cheap option, or are they going to enter the veteran market with a Leonard Fournette, with a Kareem Hunt, or are they just going into the draft and going with the Tony Pollard and rookie combination? So tell fantasy players what to do.
You better hope they sign a Fournette. You better hope they sign Kareem Hunt. Be careful what you wish for, Tony Pollard zealots. Be careful what you wish for. I don't love this for Tony Pollard. This gives me the creeps. This is a foreboding sign that they could be bringing in a real explosive difference maker at running back.
Well, they had Ronald Jones in town yesterday, so we're really hoping for, Dameon Harris would have been a really nice outcome for Pollard, I think.
So many. So many of these options would have been great for Pollard. Going into the draft with no one behind him is terrifying. Terrifying. Charbonnet goes there. Bad. Kendre Miller. Bad. Roschon Johnson. Bad. Don't even get me started with Bijan Robinson. I'm not even using those names. I'm not even going there, right?
They would certainly sell a lot of Bijan Robinson Cowboys jerseys, Matt. I think that would be the number one jersey sale in the NFL for several years running if Jerry could pull that off.
I don't like this. I'm a Pollard fan. I'm a raging Tony Pollard fan, and this was not what I wanted. I wanted a nice meat shield running back. Just sign Dante Foreman and move on with life. They did not do it. And I know how this movie ends. Oh, man, I know how this movie ends. It's not good. It's good they franchise tagged him. So they're devoting a lot of money in 2023 to Tony Pollard. That is great news. What about Jahmyr Gibbs going to Dallas?
In round 1?
Is that worst case scenario for Pollard, or is it worse to have one of these all-purpose backs that's going to eat up all the early down work, and then he's going to be back in a satellite back role?
Worst case scenario, Jahmyr Gibbs would be catastrophic for Tony Pollard.
Wouldn't
because
it be?
Tony
Because
Pollard
then they would
without the
also be
receptions.
forced to give some grinder touches as well. That's why it feels the worst. Like, I don't even want to say his name in conjunction with Tony Pollard because it's just so terrifying.
Yeah, don't even say that name. Jahmyr Gibbs, we can't even mention that around Tony Pollard again, Matt. Don't put that out in the universe.
The good news is, though, guys, is that Jahmyr Gibbs, his projected draft position is nowhere near where the Cowboys are picking. Unless you think Gibbs is a first-round pick, I don't think that the Cowboys have a top 10 pick in the second round, do they? I mean, unless they'd have to move up, because I haven't seen mocks where Gibbs is solidly in the first round. I see him fringing, so the Cowboys would have to reach at pick 20, whatever it is.
Or they trade down.
Yes.
There it is.
They
There it
trade
is.
down all the time, dude.
There
They
it is.
trade down 10 spots, and they draft Gibbs. And we're all apoplectic at that point. That would be so bad for Tony Pollard. Now, we should talk about one quarterback strategy for drafts, because I want to talk about Gibbs versus the non-Bijan picks. We'll get into the free agents more in a minute, but I really want to debate, especially in a single quarterback league, who the hell are you taking at the 102, the 103, 104? I want to get Theo's opinion on that. I want to get Alan's opinion on that after this. Hey, it's the Podfather. Now, in the offseason, I get into baseball, I get into basketball, and my preferred platform to play fantasy sports is Rival Fantasy, because Rival Fantasy has challenges where you can just take a guy and say, hey, this guy's going to score more fantasy points than this guy. They put two shortstops together, pick one. Point guards, pick one. Spoiler alert, you should pick Damian Lillard. Or they have the fantasy book where you can pick over, under, and up to 5 guys. And then the more you pick, your potential payout quickly escalates. And finally, I submit a bingo card because you can just go over, under across the board, get your fantasy bingo card set, submit it. I'm not the biggest basketball or baseball expert, but I have a hell of a lot of fun playing fantasy sports on rivalfantasy.com. And the best part is with promo code PLAYER, they refund up to $50 of any losses. So the promo code there is PLAYER on rivalfantasy.com. Go have some fun. Let's get into it.
Said like a pro, by the way. That did you have to do that in one take or for Rival, or was that a couple edits there? Because that was seamless, my friend. Seamless.
It was one take, but it was edited.
One
So
take,
that's
Charlie.
that's
over
the
here.
that's the best I could do, man. I can't do that without editing. There has to be some editing in there.
And were you reading a script, or did you commit most of it to memory? I mean, that was commercial level stuff right there.
This is pretty meta, and I love it because it's about me. So I just riffed it, right? I just I pulled up the site and the app, and I just started talking about what I like about it. Again, there were some stumbles, right? But it was one take, and then I cut out some of the stumbles, and I streamlined it. Some of my pauses, I streamlined it because, for the podcast, I want it to be, super slick. But also in video editing, my goal is for all those to be a minute or less. And so I'm looking at like a minute 20 on the video timer, and I'm like, okay, we got to slice off 20 seconds of fat from this, right? There are some details that probably weren't that big of a deal, didn't move the needle. There was me stumbling. There was shrinking down some silence. And when you do that, you take something from a minute 20 to a minute, and then you just you ship it.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was from Scott Pianowski over at Yahoo. He had said, an editor once told him, anything you could say in 13 words, you could probably say the same thing in 9 words.
Okay. That's pretty arbitrary.
Well, again, just the 13 and 9, yes, is just basically try to edit yourself down and just get to the meat of it. You're not into that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very long-winded.
No,
I can do podcasts on my own, right? But I do like to deliver for the audience something concise, something that doesn't meander. And especially those that listen to the podcast, I take a lot of pride in tightening up right? I mean, Theo, you've been working with me the last few weeks as the director of podcasting. You can tell that I like a nice, tight podcast.
Yeah, it's you like a very clean podcast, and you put a lot of work into it. And I'll give a shout out to Scott Pianowski, who will be a contributor to our world famous draft kit, which is on the horizon. Exciting to have Scott as a part of it.
You never got back to me. You never got back to me which player. I put in my request for my players. You never got back to me.
You're getting a premium player, Alan. Don't worry. Yeah, I know your list of guys. You're gonna have one of your selections, Alan. I promise. Yeah, no, Travis Kelce, an on-air promise of Travis Kelce, one of your requested guys, Alan.
Travis Kelce at the 1.1. That's the case I'm making for next season.
I yelled at him. Don't worry, Alan. I yelled at Theo today. I said, Theo, can we get going with a lot of these different players that need to be analyzed? We got a lot of people that want to analyze player X, player Y, player Z. Can you send them the links? Can you send them the instructions? And Theo's on it, baby. Theo's on it this year. All over it.
Yeah, the reason that I'm getting on you, Theo, is because I put a lot of thought into this thing, and I like to script it out. I like to do a nice edited video. I don't just turn my cell phone around and say, here, player profile, you do the work. I hand in a finished product, as you can see by the last 2 years I did, so that's why I'm getting on you, Theo. That's the only reason.
Love it, Alan. I can't wait to see you break down Travis Kelce.
Single quarterback league. We're going Bijan Robinson at the 101. And then what? Because we've got complaints, right? People can email us. You can email me, particularly like Podfather at rotounderworld.com. Also, podcasts at rotounderworld.com. That'll get to all of us. We don't have Sonic Truth. We should have Sonic Truth at rotounderworld.com. How many different emails do we really need? We don't need that many emails. So you can contact us also on Twitter, right? At RotoUnderworld. And there's also a Sonic Truth Twitter handle, right? At Sonic Truth Pod on Twitter. That's now active. Lots of ways. You can also just watch the show live on YouTube and throw it in the chat. A lot of complaints that we seem to only care about Superflex leagues and that we're Superflex snobs. So we are taking heart, and we're going to talk a little bit of one quarterback. Some people are still in one quarterback leagues. We understand that. And the strategy is interesting to me. And how single quarterback diverges from Superflex and two quarterback absolutely interests me. And it makes it easier also to distill it down to, especially in this particular case, if you're looking at the 102, a choice between two guys, right? Is anyone deciding between anyone other than Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jahmyr Gibbs?
There are some Jordan Addison truthers out there, but I think that the majority of people are on JSN or Gibbs, and there's really no argument against one of those guys at the 102. And anybody who thinks we're not into non-superflex, the majority of my leagues are non-superflex, one quarterback dynasty leagues. So I have a number of 102s, a number of 103s. Matt and Alan and I talked about the importance of getting to this tier of the 1, 2, 3 in this draft class in single QB leagues. And I think that those two guys, Matt, you can legitimately make an argument that they are in a single tier right behind Bijan. And I think that you can be team specific with your Gibbs versus JSN argument. If my team really needs a wide receiver, I can go JSN. If my team really needs a running back, I can go Gibbs. When there's a tie to be broken, I want to lean towards the running back because the value spike, the equity behind that position is so important in these single QB leagues that if they both hit, Gibbs will be worth more than JSN at the end of the season, in my opinion.
Well, that is true. That is true. If Gibbs lands in best case scenario and has a great fantasy season, his upside will blow the doors off of whatever Jackson Smith and Jigba can do as a rookie. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba would have to go full Odell Beckham Jr. rookie year, whereas Jahmyr Gibbs can just do what a lot of these quality second-year running backs do. He just has to make sure he's not Kenyon Drake.
Can I throw a little spoke in the wheel here, a little screwdriver in the dryer? What if, and just
isn't it a screwdriver in the spokes?
In the spokes, I couldn't think of a
screwdriver in the dryer. A spoke in the wheel. What the fuck are you talking about?
Well,
how about a fork in the microwave?
There you go. Oh, that's dangerous. You don't want to put aluminum in the microwave, But
so now you know where you can't put things.
Yeah. No, there's no aluminum.
Now you're on it. Now you're a genius, Alan, with household appliances. But before, you had no idea what could go in the dryer.
Zero.
You had no idea what you could put on a bicycle tire or wheel.
A fork is only going to scratch up your dryer too, Alan. I don't think a fork is going to break the inside of your dryer. It's just going to scratch it all up.
Screwdriver? Somewhere in the, I don't even where he was putting the screwdriver. I know he was putting a spoke in the wheel, which, yes, Alan went full caveman.
Yeah.
Alan went full proto-human. We're going to it. Yes, Alan, that's how wheels work.
All right.
Yeah, well, Alan is literally reinventing the wheel.
Knife in the
on the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. I thought I'd seen it all. Now I have.
I'm mixing up my my analogies, but either way, I think that whereas the fantasy football dynasty community is assuming that it's a lock that Jahmyr Gibbs is the second running back. What if a team wants a 3-down running back and Zach Charbonnet actually gets drafted ahead of Gibbs? Let's just pretend that happened for a second because I think it's in the possibility. I think it's more than a 5 or 10% chance. I think there's a 15, 20% chance that happens. Will that change your outlook on that? Does JSN automatically become the second pick? Does Charbonnet, should he go ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs in Dynasty? So just get into your head for a second where Charbonnet goes a few picks before Gibbs.
So the scenario that would kind of move the needle for me, and it's a team he's been linked to, is Zach Charbonnet ending up in Cincinnati, a team who apparently has an affinity for him. And there's potential that they could move on from Mixon very quickly at any moment if the off-the-field stuff, there's any kind of a news dump happens that they need to, rid themselves of Mixon. Charbonnet seems like the kind of replacement that they could just plug in. I don't
if
want to
you have Mixon and you see Pirine signing elsewhere, it's just like Zeke leaving Dallas. That is bad news. You don't want to see that. The only person who's happy about that is Chris Evans. Right? Chris Evans went up in our dynasty rankings. So we have very deep dynasty rankings where the running backs go out as far as the eye can see, hundreds of receivers ranked. We go very, very deep. PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, the player rankings, either place you can get our dynasty rankings. And yeah, Chris Evans, classic guy that's like doubling his dynasty value overnight with Samaje Perine going elsewhere. But it's also a signal that the Bengals are not backfilling that position. They intend to perhaps aggressively pursue that position in the draft. They don't have a lot of weaknesses, right? They lose Jesse Bates. They're going to go after the secondary. That's probably in the first round. They'll go defensive back. Then it's like this giant barrier that you have to overcome as a Joe Mixon enthusiast. If you have him in Dynasty, a lot of his value is tied to the fact that he's on the Bengals.
Yes.
So them going any of these 3-down players at the end of the second round would be bad. Kendre Miller, bad. Roschon Johnson, bad. Very bad.
So get back into that scenario again where Charbonnet goes ahead of Gibbs in the real NFL draft. I think there's a chance of that happening.
Well, if they're close enough in the real NFL draft and Charbonnet goes 10 spots ahead, that's not necessarily gonna scare me off of it. I think that the thing about Gibbs is we talk about receiving ability with these running backs, and Zach Charbonnet is an okay receiver, but Gibbs could be a potentially elite receiver out of the backfield. He's going to need to at 199 pounds, but I think that there's enough teams that view him as a difference maker. It's easy to really get excited about his potential as a fantasy producer, as a guy who could potentially be a 75 catch guy out of the backfield. So I don't think I'm necessarily scared off if it's a drafted beforehand scenario, but if Charbonnet lands into just the best spot and Gibbs lands into a spot that maybe worries us a little bit, that's when I would start adjusting things.
Joe Mixon is due $10 million this year and only 5.5 against the cap. So they could save close to $5 million by cutting him if they have a 3-down player, the 1-for-1 replacement for Joe Mixon. And that's what Zach Charbonnet would be. That's what Roschon Johnson would be. I think Roschon Johnson's a better example. Roschon Johnson's very similar to Joe Mixon in that he wasn't the main guy in college. Joe Mixon was actually behind Samaje Perine in college, ironically. Just like Roschon was rotating behind Bijan Robinson at Texas. And they're both 220-plus pounds with all-purpose skill sets. They bring in Roschon, man. They're teeing up for that move. They're teeing up for Miller, Roschon, Charbonnet, end of the second round.
Yeah.
It's all ready to go.
But, that being said, Gibbs is a guy I'm really rooting for to land well, Allen. Like in terms of, and it would not be a great thing for the overall running back position in Dynasty if Gibbs does not land well. We want Gibbs to become a thing because it's getting more and more difficult with these running backs getting slightly older. We're looking for the next one to come in. And I do think that there's an argument that Charbonnet, even if he lands perfectly, he's going to reach a certain level that he can't really get past. It's hard to imagine him being, Matt, you would agree, it's hard to ever imagine Charbonnet being like a top 5 Dynasty running back. I think it would be a great win if he becomes a top 10 one.
Who's his best comp? in the league now, this best veteran comp? Would it be Josh Jacobs? Would it be Leonard Fournette? Would it be Dameon Pierce? He's a better receiver than Pierce. Maybe Mixon. Maybe Mixon is his best comp. But he was an actual dominant workhorse in college. You really have to go down the board to try to figure out who his best comp would be. I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling, and I'm not seeing anyone that's exactly like him. Maybe you would go down to Rachaad Penny, but he's a better receiver than Rachaad Penny. So it's difficult because he does have the size. He really is a throwback player where he's catching 30-plus passes. He's 220-plus pounds. Cam Akers? Maybe Cam Akers is his best comp. Just look stylistically without running all the numbers. I think Cam Akers, at one point, he was top 10 running back in the league in Dynasty. Yes. He made it. He cracked the top 10 for a period of time. And yeah, it's true. I'm looking at Zach Charbonnet's best comparable on Player Profiler right now. It's not an active running back. Okay, so you saw me struggling to find an active running back that I could comp him to. Wasn't easy. His best comp is DeMarco Murray.
How about Fournette? Would Fournette be or is he just, is that, I know it's like dicey. It's hard to find one, but.
He came in lighter than 220, so you can't really compare him to those guys that are above 220. He doesn't really comp to Mixon anymore. He's more comp to the guys around that 215 area. So in terms of active running backs, it's got to be Cam Akers is his best comparable. But Cam Akers did come out early, and Charbonnet did not. But in terms of size, skill set, he's Cam Akers. And putting Cam Akers up as high as we did and many did, vaulting Akers and Dobbins all into the top 10 at one point just because of the hope of that 2020 running back class, that hasn't aged well, right? It just hasn't.
And I like the fact that his comparable is DeMarco Murray. I mean, I think like it's, that was a guy that helped our fantasy teams for years, was a very successful fantasy asset. And I think that's like that being a peak outcome for Charbonnet, we would absolutely get excited about that, Alan, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's elite, though. Cody said in the chat, Montgomery, that I think is a better sort of production comp. Now, not as stylistic maybe, but, where he's RB11 to RB14 early on in his career. And you're like, okay, this is – because you don't need to hit a home run every single time in your rookie draft. Pick 4, pick 5, you're in a single quarterback league, you're happy to hit a double. Like, you're like, oh, I could start this guy every single week? Great.
I don't want to hit doubles from the 102, though, Alan. The 102, yeah, the 102. That's my problem. It's I can paint a scenario where Gibbs and JSN are just truly elite fantasy guys compared to Charbonnet. So I really want to hit a home run from that 102 and the 103.
We have Jackson Smith and Jigba pretty comfortably ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs in our rookie rankings. I'm just going to let everybody know that. That's just the information. That's full disclosure. That's what we do on this show. And I'm not sorry. Regardless of team need, I'm going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's just too risky with these running backs. You think they're in a great situation, like Cam Akers on the Rams. Suddenly, he's blown out his Achilles. He's persona non grata with the team. The offensive line has crumbled, and they're tanking. That came at us fast, right? That was very quick. We're like, oh, man, this guy, that's part of the case for Cam Akers being a top 10 dynasty running back was the situation, was the team. It's a Jackson Smith and Jigba, just a much more stable asset, so that's who I would go with at the 102, and then at the 103, not necessarily locked into Gibbs. If Charbonnet goes ahead of Gibbs in the draft and lands in a better spot, they will flip. Charbonnet is a lot bigger than him too. It has and projects to be more of a workhorse in the NFL than Gibbs could. So then the question is, what about the 105 spot? Then the 105 spot becomes very interesting. I think we can mostly agree that we're going to go Charbonnet or Gibbs over a Johnston, over an Addison. But at the 105, is that where that's the decision point, right? Addison versus Johnston? Because I had that decision recently in a mock, because we're doing a mock right now at Player Profiler, and I wanted to go Roschon Johnson. I really did. My heart was telling me Roschon, just pumping away. Roschon. And then I picked Addison.
Yeah, it's 105 is interesting. And I think that you bring up Johnston. I'll throw, just as a dark horse, Kendre Miller in there as well, who we have a little lower. But we have TCU Pro Day coming up on the 31st. That needs to be like a massive day for both of those guys. Kendre Miller and Quentin Johnston, there's a lot that they need to show on that Pro Day. 105 right now, if we're going, way before the NFL draft and we're just drafting us today, I'm going Jordan Addison at the 105. But I think that there's a chance that Quentin Johnston leaps him. I think there's a chance a running back leaps him. But I think Addison at the 105 would be the pick.
Geographically, it's unfair that the roster watch guys could just go down the street, right, to the TCU Pro Day. Of all Pro Days, the TCU Pro Day is like everything, right? Meanwhile, Cody's having to drive to Georgia to see defensive linemen, right? He's going to Virginia, right, to try to see Dontavian Wicks. I mean, it's unfair, man.
Geographic advantage of Texas.
That's the Pro Day.
Yep. In that draft that you guys just referenced, by the way, Theo is on the clock in that draft. You guys, you don't consider Devon Achane? Is that how you say it? Devon Achane? I mean, he seems to be a lot of, he is in that RB3 conversation. I know that you don't have him there. He's in that RB.
185 pounds, Alan.
No, I understand why Player Profiler doesn't have him there, but there's, if you look around credible rankings around the industry, you will see
How
see
credible?
him there. Not as credible as Player Profiler, but I'm just saying is that I think
that's rhetorical. Of course, there's no more credible rankings in Dynasty than Player Profiler.
But here's the question: doesn't he belong?
Achane's not even that agile. Like, his lateral quickness isn't even a massive strength. You have to have that at that size, or you're going to get run into and run over in the NFL. You have to have a joystick with your lower body if you're going to be that small. I'm terrified of Achane. Terrified.
So I like Achane more than Matt does, but I think you really can't make an argument to put him above those guys just with the playing in 180-something pounds. Even with his speed, I think he translates more in a best-case scenario to be a 12 to 15 touch-a-game guy, and it's just going to be difficult for him to ever, have elite fantasy numbers with that sort of volume. But
He's going to leave everybody wanting, man. It's going to be C.J. Spiller all over again. He's going to leave everybody wanting. Every year, you're going to be left wanting, Alan. It's going to be such a tease.
Really,
he's going to be the ultimate fantasy tease.
Yeah. What the question was, though, is that let's say he is the third or fourth running back off the board and he goes to a spot that we could live with. Doesn't he belong in the first round? Because we're talking about single quarterback first round. Doesn't he belong? And where does he belong in the first round? Does he go after the Addison Johnston tier? Or if you're in, running backs, I mean, Theo can attest to this. You try as soon as the draft is over, it's impossible to get 22-year-old running backs. It's like the cost is prohibitive. The only place to get those guys is in your rookie draft. So if you're sitting there at the 1-6 or whatever it is, and Johnston, Addison, 105, and Achane's there, and he's in a spot we like, is it time to understand the value and what it's going to cost post-draft and just take him?
He better get drafted early, man. He better go day 2, early day 2, ideally. We're projecting him to go there. That's why he's so high in our rankings. We have him at RB9 overall. We have him at the player 9, right? But if you're drafting him over Kendre Miller, for example, or Roschon Johnson, that's just simply a mistake. Okay, these are some of the stances we take are controversial at the time, and then in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, of course, right? And this is one of those where we're like, you just can't fundamentally take a small guy that doesn't have great lateral quickness, no matter how fast he is, no matter how infatuated you are, over guys that are Kendre Miller, Roschon Johnson, size, speed specimens with all-purpose skill sets. Fuck out of here. That's just not what we do. I'm not saying this is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor all over again, but this is an example of, hey, you have small running back versus running back with a truly difference-making physique and skill set. Don't go there. Don't even go there with your mind, is what we're saying. Don't even go there. And ADP might say, oh, well, Achane's going a full round before Roschon. Okay. We're not an ADP ranking service. We're a service that shows you the ADP, and then we also show you where we have the guy, and you can find the values from there.
Yeah, to me, Achane will end up being a guy, if he lands well, that you consider around like the 108 to 111 range. I think that's, and I don't think he'll end up steaming up higher than that just because of the things Matt brings up. He'd have to land like absolutely perfectly to kind of get into that, where he starts going above the Addisons, Quentin Johnsons, whereas the backs with size though have it.
That's the landing trap, man. Some of these landing zones are full traps. I mean, you're never. Last time I'll bring it up. Edwards-Helaire to Kansas City. Okay, that was the trap of the traps, right? We learned our lesson, right? I mean, we didn't learn the lesson. We taught the lesson. The rest of the community had to learn the lesson, okay? That's what we're talking about. Achane goes somewhere sexy. Oh, my God. Run and hide.
What would be the sexy spot? Can you think of one that would be something where it would give a lot of the fantasy industry like the magnet? It would suck them in. What's the
Dallas?
best two spots?
It's
If
the
it goes
Chargers.
to Dallas, imagine if Dallas can't get Miller, but they want that prototype of player, and Miller's just so much better in every way, has the lateral quickness, has all those things that Achane doesn't. But there's some scout in Texas that is close to the Texas A&M program and assures Jerry and everybody, oh, this guy's going to be almost as good, and they go ahead and push the button.
Do the scout impression of him talking to Jerry in the war room.
Yeah, sure, Jerry. I know we had our eye on this just Jahmyr Gibbs fella, and man, he's a player. He can really move. He can shake it. And again, no Zeke. So we're gonna need bodies at least in the backfield now. Here's the problem: we've talked to a lot of the general managers around the league, Jerry, and Gibbs is not going to be there. And I know that you're the daddy, right? But your son has said no trading up anymore. We don't do that anymore. We play it conservative now. We play it close to the vest. I understand that, right? Now here's how we do it: we wait, and if we can get Devon Achane in the late second round, we don't have to trade up. We don't have to move anything. We just hit boom, and this guy's world-class speed, Jerry. Almost as good as Jahmyr Gibbs. Almost as good as the real thing. Big-time playmaker. I think that's the direction we go, Jerry.
Theater of the mind.
Excellent.
Standing ovation.
There's a couple of...
we like this Jahmyr Gibbs.
Classic Jerry.
I'm going to close my eyes when he's doing it.
He is delicious. Very highly skilled at the art of the football. Okay.
Bring us back to reality, Theo.
So I think we've got it dialed in here. I think we've got this figured out. Who to take, who not to take. I think in that spot, just go Zay Flowers. I think you just go Zay Flowers. Just like before, we were like, hey, I'm just gonna go Addison. I'm just gonna go chalk receiver. Sometimes you're better off just going chalk receiver in that spot and not overthinking it. Also knowing you can trade back, right? Like the Cowboys might do. So trade back, trade back, trade back. You're looking at Achane, trade back and get Spears. That's the move. That's the tactic in a rookie draft.
The value spike spot in the second round that could push Achane up, or could push up one of the backs that maybe Matt's a little more confident in, is that Miami spot. Despite the fact that they're bringing back Wilson, they're bringing back Mostert, I think once you start getting a speed guy attached to a Mike McDaniel offense, then people are going to start having visions of Achane breaking off 50-yard big plays and all that, and I think that could really push him up. That would be like the perfect storm, perfect storm spot. Yeah,
even better than Dallas. Dallas has the Texas connection and the brand equity, but you can never ever and again, this is why Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the perfect example, because he had everything, right? You had the coach, but then also the offense, right? You had everything, right? So now in Miami, you've got the coach. You can never underestimate coach worship in fantasy football.
Big time. And McDaniel is the ultimate coach worship guy. He consolidated that target share so well. Waddle and Hill both producing. People, and people look back at the fact that Mostert and Wilson both had weeks for him. Whatever running back lands in Miami is going to get a boost in these dynasty rankings. It's like, if that second round pick is used on a running back, look out, Matt. That's the riser.
Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. He might as well be Kyle Shanahan. And if you, at any point, right, we're standing next to Kyle Shanahan at a urinal in the front office, right? How could you go wrong? I mean, your running game is going to be so efficient. You got to go get those running backs. You think about all the running backs that Kyle Shanahan has drafted early, and there's just, starting with Joe Williams. I mean, it's just been hit after hit after hit after hit.
TDP,
these fast guys like Achane that go to the zone scheme, right? The stretch zone blocking scheme. Oh man. Oh, you can't. There's not a bad thing you can say about that, guys.
I'm not too old to remember, Matt, a certain analyst ranking Trey Sermon as the RB1 in his class a few years ago.
Stop it.
I will. I'll take it down a notch. There you go.
Stop
Alan,
it.
another
Stop
one of
it.
these rankings.
He's a good man, and he's taken a lot of criticism from me, but he is a good man. He tries. He breaks down film on his computer and shares it with people. He's doing a great service.
Yeah, when you take a bold stance like that, though, you don't want to be nuclear level wrong. I mean, again, we all get stuff wrong. You don't want to be that wrong, because that is just catnip for people to come at you.
Alan, you're killing Matt Waldman, Alan. You're killing him. Go easy.
By the way, we've all been wrong about things, so this is not that, but just it was very. Listen, he's a very public figure. He has a big platform, and he just made, literally, when people talk about the all-time greatest Mount Rushmore of getting it wrong, he's on the mountain. I mean, I wish
Yes.
I had the platform he had to be on that mountain.
Right. So we know that, okay, Waldman's on there with Sermon. We know that Nate Liss is on there with Edwards-Helaire.
No, there's I'm pulling up the guy's name now, just because we're throwing out the Mount Rushmore. I might as well pull him up.
The Mount Wrongmore. There you go.
There was a certain analyst that had Jamar Chase as wide receiver 7 overall in his draft class.
Really?
Yes, it was.
Pull
this
that
was
one out.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Or is who was the guy that Cody had as the RB2 in the class 3 years ago? Jamar Jefferson, but he didn't go to bat for that, though. But that was Cody. You get honorable mention of Mount Rushmore of wrong for that one.
I think Cody brought him down after his 40
did.
time.
And
Yeah, that was
he
pre-combine. He came out early. He looked like a stud at Oregon State, and then ran slow, and we crossed him off the list.
Who brought this up? Was this a topic, Theo? This is the best topic I think of the day right here. The
Yeah,
Mount.
I mean, if you have Trey Sermon RB1 and then you see him run a 4.7 and then you keep him,
That's
post
the
it
crime.
up, right?
That's the crime.
You're entrenched. You can't do that, right? You've got to adjust. You got to have a Bayesian process. You can't just stick to it because I'm not a flip flopper. Nonsense. I get called a flip flopper sometimes because I dare change rankings and opinions based on new information.
How about Chris Sims being on the Mount Rushmore of quarterback controversy? He has Hendon Hooker as his QB3. Chris Sims in this year. You know how he always has
I'm happy to put Sims on that Mount Rushmore.
Sims he belongs in there.
The Wrongmore is a great name for that. Thank you.
Mount Wrongmore.
Mount Wrongmore.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I'll give a shout out to our boy Scott Bullinger, Jax Falcone, because he tweets at this guy once in a while with just says wide receiver 7. So he brings up the Ja'Marr Chase. He won't let it die. And that's a shout out to John Helmkamp. I don't know the man, but he had Ja'Marr Chase wide receiver 7 in his class.
We had N'Keal Harry ranked, I think top 5, top 3 even, probably top 3 in a class with A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. In fairness, he was also drafted before those guys. So the NFL agreed with that, and it was one of the great curveballs in prospect evaluation history because N'Keal Harry looked like a very clean prospect coming out, and he very much was not.
A lot of people took L's on N'Keal Harry. That draft class was like the ultimate lesson learned. Don't get comfortable with the number 1 wide receiver drafted in the class, especially with AJ and DK just hitting so well. But N'Keal Harry had a lot of love. There weren't a lot of people that were anti N'Keal Harry.
Right, we had him very high. So I just want to be clear. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Someone else said Hakeem Butler, wide receiver 1. Is that another Waldman special?
Well, Matt doesn't call him Hakeem Butler. He calls him by his legal name, Hakeem Bustler.
I hate guys. Listen, I'm trying to balance this. Okay, we've had takes that did not work out. Okay, but yes, we have been insistent that certain players are massively overrated by the industry, and Hakeem Bustler was a great example of that in that he couldn't outproduce Allen Lazard in his junior year at Iowa State. That was the only point I ever made, and I said, you can't have that guy number 1. You just can't. And then his draft stock started dropping, and then mock drafts started falling. Next thing you know, he falls to day 3 of the NFL draft. Next thing you know, he's switching to tight end. Next thing you know, he's out of the league. Told you so.
That's the death nail, right? Switching to tight end is always uh-oh. It's like 1 foot in the grave, 1 on the banana peel at that point.
Right. So, but also I would say that we are not just criticism. We're not just criticizing others. We were very bullish on Chris Godwin for a very long time before he finally broke out all over the place. So, and we've always been super bullish on a good DJ Moore, just saying, hey, this guy needs to find his way to the right quarterback situation like we talked about last week, and then it's going to be game on. So there's certain types of profiles, whether it be running backs that look like Charbonnet, Miller, Roschon, or they be wide receivers, specifically wide receivers that look like DJ Moore, look like Chris Godwin. We are going to be very bullish. You know when you see it. You know when you see these guys declaring for the NFL draft, okay, player profiler is going to be high on that guy, not so high on that guy, high on that guy, not so high on that guy. Sorry, we have a type. Not sorry, actually. Not sorry at all.
On brand wide receivers and running backs.
They tend to work out, as Alan mentioned. That is important. Yeah. That is important. We have an incredible track record. We know what we're doing. Now, we've essentially figured out the first round of a single quarterback draft. You're welcome, everybody.
You want to just go over it quick? Just rip through it in tier level? So just so people know, no one's arguing Bijan tier 1. Tier 2, you have right now you have Gibbs, JSN, and Charbonnet could creep into that tier. He's like hanging on to a vine in that tier.
I more am thinking JSN is in his own tier, but you guys have your opinion on that.
Okay, but I'm saying is I think that Gibbs belongs clearly after him in that tier. But if Theo wants to put him ahead because running backs are more valuable, I mean, in the trading market.
I mean,
And then I think that Gibbs and Charbonnet are in a tier.
Fair.
And then I believe that there's a tier of Quentin Johnston, Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, but then also Jordan Addison. And that is the tier where I am fine saying whatever you need. Because I hate drafting based on need, but when it's that close between those kinds of guys, if you need receiver, go Johnston. Okay? You need running back, go Roshan, go Kendre Miller. That's a very close tier. That's really choose your own adventure, whatever you need to do tier. Then it becomes trade the fuck down. Then at that point, you get the hell out of there. You run and hide. You try to trade back and get a guy like Spears that is going to be more available in the mid-second round, or even, especially, Roshan Johnson. So you try to trade back into the mid-second round to get the Spears and the Johnsons that fall, Marvin Mims. That is the strategy. Shouldn't really be picking at the end of the first round in single quarterback. If you have to, the highest floor player, the one I'm most comfortable selecting, would be Zay Flowers.
And I think Zay Flowers is going to move up, Matt. I think the draft capital will be there. I really, really like the player. So for me, Alan, if I'm doing the same tier process, it's Bijan. Then to me, it's Matt's correct in the JSN's kind of his own little island at the 2. I'll say Gibbs and then Charbonnet, but they're close. Then they would be the Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson tier. And then I'll put Zay Flowers up there with those guys. And
what if Zay Flowers ends up in New England? He went to Boston. They need that exact skill set in New England. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. They're desperate to upgrade this wide receiver core. You know they're going to go back to the well. They can't just never draft another receiver because they've been so snake-bitten. They're going to do it.
I think I would let the draft capital weigh it, and I'm not going to get completely scared of the landing spot because I think that Mac Jones could fall into a very nice target share in New England. I would not be thrilled with it, but if Zay Flowers, on the flip side, if Zay Flowers lands in Los Angeles, then we're standing on our head.
No, you're right. I just stepped in the dog shit that I always talk about. I just stepped in it. Potentially avoiding a player because of the system he goes to, instead of the simple fact that he's going to be the best receiver on the field with one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league. That should be the focus, not the fact that it's Matt Patricia running the team into the ground.
Yeah. And then Kendre Miller, to me, I don't want. Can this become like a better in best ball cliche? But I'll throw out a new cliche. I want to see the pro day. Could that be a new cliche? But I really do want to see the pro day.
You want the answers to the test first. That you don't get that right now. No way.
And I want Cody or somebody that I really respect to say, that's it. We're checking off the boxes on Kendre. This is enough, because I want to see it. Like, the sample size for Kendre is not massive. There's a lot to like, but we want to see it at the pro day. The TCU pro day, it does not get bigger than that for us Dynasty players. There's a couple of pro days that we want to see. Like, we want to see Israel Abanikanda at Pitt. A couple of, we wanted to see Tyjae Spears. That happened. He checked off the boxes. But the TCU pro day is like as big as it gets for our rookie drafts. Like, we really need those guys to show. And if either of those has a really bad day, it's not good, Matt. It's not good.
No, it's not good for this class.
Not good at all for the class.
Yeah, we're banking on Kendre Miller being good. I believe he's fast. All the analysis is this is a big fast dude. So I'm excited.
Both guys should be fast. Sorry, Matt. Both guys should be fast. We need to see it though. And like Quentin Johnson was a little smaller than we wanted him to be at the combine. A little bit shorter. And let's go see Quentin Johnson. If his pro day 40 is like a 4.46, and we can comfortably say he's a low 4-5 guy, I think that's enough for him to get excited. If he runs lower than that, then we're getting really excited.
I want to get really excited. Can we get really excited? I want to get really excited because I'm not getting excited about these free agent landing spots.
Can I just ask you another thing, guys? This is important about single quarterback leagues because this is a real question about rookie drafts that people have. There's going to be a quarterback and that goes at the 1.1. Where should that now? Obviously we famously had an argument about Trevor Lawrence going ahead of Javonte Williams. By the way, I was right.
No, you weren't right. Enough.
I was right.
What are you talking about?
All right, but
Even
fair
to
enough.
this day, we go to our one quarterback rankings. We have Javonte Williams ahead of Trevor Lawrence because, of course, we do.
Big mistake. But anyway, let's get back to the
big mistake.
But Alan, just as a process, in an FFPC league right now that I'm in, I could flip Trevor Lawrence for Javonte Williams any day I want. Even though Trevor Lawrence is a top 6, quarterback in Dynasty, I can flip it. I can flip the injured Javonte Williams and go get myself a Trevor Lawrence right now in a lot of these leagues. So it's a hard argument to win here with Matt.
Yeah, no, but really what my question for you guys is don't worry about
who the QB. Wrong Allen was. This is how wrong he was in the mock draft we did with Roster Watch. Javonte Williams missed most of last season and has multiple ligament tears that are going to prevent him from playing at 100% this year. Everybody knows this, and everyone still, after Trevor Lawrence broke out last year, prefers Javonte Williams.
I disagree. I don't think that. I think that show me that trade. I don't think that gets done. Offer that trade out. We always say that there's only 6 or 7 quarterbacks you could rely on in fantasy
you
football.
really are. You really are the super flex snob that everyone claims it. It's a different world. You seem to not have any idea how one quarterback leagues work.
Yeah, but here's my question for you guys, and here, I'll start with Matt. Right, since you're the crux of this argument is that where should QB1 go in these single quarterback leagues? Where's the breaking point where you're like, hey, wait a second here. I'm starting Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Carr every week. I need a difference maker at the position because I'm going against Josh Allen. So whoever QB1 is, where's the breaking point that you can endorse drafting that player?
After Tajay Spears is off the board, I do want Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is the one clear difference maker in single quarterback. So another interesting element of our rankings, which you don't see anywhere else that I'm aware of, is the mobile quarterbacks with serious upside, the Trey Lances, the Anthony Richardsons. They have a premium in single quarterback leagues because you might as well just target those guys. There's really no benefit in rostering a pocket passer in a single quarterback league. It's not moving the needle. So why even do it? So we're not going to have Bryce Young anywhere on here in a single quarterback league. I don't even think we have Bryce Young. He's not even in the second round of a single quarterback league. We actually have him in the third round because you're not gaining anything by putting Bryce Young on your single quarterback team. Doesn't make any sense. On the other side, you get real leverage if Anthony Richardson hits. So unless it's a player I'm infatuated with like a Tajay Spears or a Zay Flowers, I'm going to want Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the second round. But you drafted Trevor Lawrence in the middle of the first round in what was an even stronger draft class.
And then you guys yelled at me for taking Ramondre Stevenson over Nico Collins. I was right again. Oh, my God. I dominated that draft. Theo, where should we be taking
QB1?
You
were very right about that. You were very right. Can I tell you how right you were? Let's check in on just how right Alan was on that one because this is fascinating. So we have a lifetime value rating that we assign based on the value over stream for the rest of their career that we're projecting for each of these players. So if you go to Stevenson, his lifetime value rating is 132-ish, okay? Just to give you some context. Now let's check out Nico. 132 for Ramondre Stevenson. Nico is our player number 198. His is 22.6.
Theo,
Crushed
they killed
it.
me.
Crushed it out.
You netted over 100 lifetime value points for your roster with that particular decision. Bravo, Alan. Bravo, Alan. Oh my God, you're doing a great job. Genius alert.
I'm telling you, follow me the whole way through. Good. Theo, where should QB1 go in these single quarterback drafts? And let's say it's Stroud, because he covered the Anthony Richardson upside, which I think we can all get behind. What if QB1 is Stroud?
So to me, QB1 is going to be Anthony Richardson no matter what for single QB leagues, because Stroud could be a successful long-term starter and never be a guy that we want to start on a 12-team, single quarterback league. He doesn't have rushing yards in his profile. He's fast, but he doesn't have rushing production there. Richardson is the guy that moves the needle. I think Matt's correct. For like the FFPC leagues that I play in, I'm going to say mid to late second will be a nice window to go get Anthony Richardson, put him on your bench, and a year from now, he might gain a ton of trade equity or be a guy I can just put in my lineup. I'll say it's similar to where we were drafting Justin Fields in a single QB league, where Justin Fields ended up right. A couple leagues, I got him like around like the 211, like the 209, maybe he lasts to the 212. Richardson might go a little bit higher just because we haven't seen an athlete like
Well, this class is not. That's
that's
dynamite
too,
class. That was a dynamite class. I want to finish a point that I was started previously. In Superflex, we calibrate these quarterbacks differently than we do in single quarterback. So, for example, I would rather have Will Levis in a single quarterback league because with his arm strength, his upside is greater than Bryce Young. And all we care about is upside with quarterbacks. But in Superflex, we actually have Bryce Young as player number 5. We want Bryce Young in a Superflex rookie draft. We're not super down on Bryce Young at all. He's super stable. You want guys like Kirk Cousins in Superflex. So those types of quarterbacks get a premium relative to the riskier upside quarterbacks in our Superflex rankings. And then when you flip over to one quarterback, there's the differential changes where, suddenly Levis is ahead of Bryce Young. And we've had people email us and reach out. It's like, hey, guys, there's something wrong with your rankings, da-da-da. And it's like, oh, no. There's nothing wrong. They're just that good.
Because the replacement value there is no replacement value. At least you could find, in the past, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm sure on the FFPC waiver wires, right? Theo, in single quarterback, the year that he popped, he was available. Geno Smith was probably available last offseason.
100%. You can always find that guy on the waiver wire, especially with roster cuts. Coming up end of the month, we have to cut our rosters down in FFPC leagues. And those guys are always there. You can draft them in the 5th round of the rookie draft because they'll be sitting there.
Can we please talk about Miles Sanders? Because I am just not thrilled with how a lot of these running backs have landed, with the exception of running backs that I don't particularly like, right? So I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed as hell that running backs I like Miles Sanders, end up in Carolina. Okay, where slower running backs that have less electricity running through their bodies, like David Montgomery and Jamal Williams, end up in best-case scenario outcomes, where Jamal Williams is now the primary back in New Orleans, and we don't know when Alvin Kamara is going to play again, and David Montgomery is the primary back now in Detroit, one of the best offenses in the league. He's going to double his touchdowns. Annoying. It's just annoying that the running backs we like are getting sent to purgatory and the plotter archetypes are getting rewarded. That's the one aspect of free agency, and for Dynasty especially, that I've found annoying.
David Montgomery is clearly the big winner here, Alan.
Giant winner. His value spiked.
Huge.
It's just for the next 2 years, he's going to be a touchdown machine.
Theo, who will go first in redraft? David Montgomery or DeAndre Swift? Who should get drafted first?
Oh, my God.
I think that as the summer moves along, you're going to see the David Montgomery jump him as it becomes apparent that his role is going to be more consistent to predict week in, week out. I really don't like saying that. DeAndre Swift's a guy that I really, really like. And I think at the end of the day, DeAndre Swift will be a useful player to have. But there's going to be certain weeks where Detroit is the favorite to win the division right now, like the betting favorite. They're going to have positive game scripts. And there's going to be weeks where David Montgomery, sees a ton of carries and DeAndre Swift might not see enough work in the passing game. I think it's going to be a very annoying. I think they'll both end up in the dead zone, but I think Montgomery's going to jump them.
What about Dynasty? You still prefer Swift?
Yes,
it's close,
probably.
Right? They're almost adjacent.
It's very off brand for me to have to say I want David Montgomery over Swift. It would almost hurt me, Matt, to do that. I love DeAndre Swift. Yeah, I can't do it.
I'm not.
He's also younger, and also next year, you have to think that next year he's going to find himself a landing spot where somebody's going to appreciate DeAndre Swift. There's enough NFL coaches who have seen it and also liked him as a prospect, and he's still going to be young enough that people are going to talk themselves into a huge role for him next offseason. I think he'll actually have a David Montgomery-like spike with his dynasty value next offseason when he lands somewhere.
That's why you're on the show, man. That's it. That's
updated
it.
ADP. Let me give you the updated ADP right here. You got right now in the underdog ADP, you have DeAndre Swift, RB 19, David Montgomery 27, RB 27.
Yeah, and I think it'll converge a little bit because I think it's kind of like the 7 stages of DeAndre Swift dynasty managers where you have to first is kind of anger at David Montgomery, and then you kind of talk yourself into that it's actually going to be good for him because DeAndre Swift's going to get all the receiving work. Well, he's not though, and that's the biggest. Montgomery's had his most productive yards per reception season last year. And he's coming from in the division where Detroit obviously has a familiarity with him, and he's gonna cut into Swift's receiving, which really is the hardest part of this for DeAndre Swift managers. And then I think you get to kind of acceptance. So, Alan, there's going to be several stages here, and by the end of the draft, people are going to say, this Montgomery guy, that's a guy that I wish I would have traded for before he went up. I've seen some very sharp dynasty managers aggressively going after David Montgomery right now, where a month ago, you could have gotten Montgomery for in a single quarterback league. You could have got him for a mid second, a high second, maybe. Now you're starting to see people trade the 109 straight up for Montgomery, and that's a trade you're seeing pretty commonly in some of these FFPC leagues.
Oh, you should absolutely. That's a deal you need to make. He's going to keep creeping up the dynasty rankings as well. With Swift, the best comparable player that I want to create a dichotomy for when we're thinking about how to value him is Rachaad White. They're the same exact age, 24.5. But you could argue that Rachaad White's further along in seizing a primary back role in Tampa and earning the trust of the coaching staff than DeAndre Swift. He also has a lesser injury track record. The anecdotal evidence is that Rachaad White is a harder worker off the field. He's more of a team guy, more of a guy that's going to be found in the weight room. And over time, that's what wins in the NFL. And that would be one of the interesting player points to make if you're looking at our rankings. You're like, how the hell do you guys have Rachaad White ahead of DeAndre Swift? And my response to that is, how could you have it otherwise? One guy has David Montgomery, the other guy doesn't. They're the same age, and they have similar skill sets. Yes, DeAndre Swift has been more efficient so far, but there was a small sample size for Rachaad White. I want to see another year of Rachaad White. Again, Tampa goes out and drafts a running back on day 2 that's going to compete with Rachaad White. Then Rachaad White is neutralized. Sure. But if it remains relatively as is with that Tampa backfield, they just bring in a complimentary piece on day 3, it's game on. Wheels up for Rachaad White. DeAndre Swift is going to be parked in neutral at least for a year, and we're just not sure what's going to happen with him. Is he going to get injured again? What's the market going to be for him? The market could be cool on him, cooler than we expect. in 2024. So there's a lot of uncertainty moving forward with DeAndre Swift. We know that White's going to be in Tampa for the next 3 years, but for the next, say, 3 months, there's actually a lot less uncertainty with Swift. We know what that backfield's going to look like. They're not going to bring in an expensive rookie now that they've added Montgomery. That was the nice thing about Detroit adding Montgomery, was you knew they weren't going to go ahead and invest top capital in a running back. It just happened to be the worst possible running back for them to sign, unfortunately. Whereas Rachaad White has fragility. His ranking absolutely has fragility. There's a bunch of running backs whose rankings have fragility. Tony Pollard has a lot of fragility. We talked about that earlier. Rachaad White has a lot of fragility. It's just that a month ago, DeAndre Swift's ranking had a lot of fragility. And then, like some vase that someone smashes on the ground, all that fragility was laid bare, and that's how a guy loses 52 points of lifetime value. That's what happened. He's by far and away the biggest dropper on the Dynasty rankings, and we talked about this, right? We talked about this before it even happened. We said, of all the running backs, Swift has the most fragility with his current Dynasty valuation, and those that are looking ahead are trying to get out now. That's what Theo talked about 2 shows ago.
Yeah. It's and just to your point with Rachaad White, I think it's absolutely correct kind of where we have him. The fact that they went out and got Chase Edmonds with all of these running backs available, they add a guy who's the least threatening to Rachaad White getting a volume boost in his rushing attempts this year.
No,
with Edmonds.
White's even a better receiver. So it's an absolute net positive for Rachaad White. Like, oh yeah, please come on in. You're no competition to me.
That's what you want.
Yeah. And you're spot on. It's going to be like a kind of a hold your breath moment all of day 2. Like day 2, if you're a Rachaad White manager, you might as well just, turn off the draft, maybe pop in
Pollard, White. These are 2 of my guys. Pollard and White are 2 of my guys, and I'm just going to be like,
it's a good night to binge Ted Lasso, Matt. Just don't even put the stress on yourself. You turn on day 3, you watch day 1. Don't watch day 2. Don't watch day 2.
Love Ted Lasso. Although he does a real disservice for Americans in the Premier League in general. Just as we're getting more and more guys playing in the Premier League, we have Jesse Marsh coaching, since fired, but was a coach in the Premier League. Then we have Ted Lasso being watched by every household in Great Britain. Not good. Not a good look for us. No, we're not actually. No, we're way. And here's the thing, though. With the English managers, they can't talk shit, right? With some of the incompetence that especially the English team has shown, and how they pick players and their formations and their roster construction. Fuck out of here. Oh, no Ivan Toney. Oh, he was his potential gambling issue. Well, it never manifested. So why are you running scared, right? So get out of here criticizing us. We're doing a great job here in the United States. Our soccer team is one of the most improved in the world. We're coming for you, England. We're not Ted Lasso. That's a television show. It's fiction. We're actually very good at soccer. We're only getting better. Check out the Nations Cup. Just 21 and 20-year-olds just stacked on the roster, playing in the Bundesliga, playing in the Italian League, playing in the Premier League. We're coming. Shut up.
Big time. And Matt, the English fans who want to criticize American managers, the coaches that are dominating the EPL are not English.
That's right.
go out to Liverpool and Man City and Arsenal. They are not hiring English managers. So leave us alone. Enjoy Ted Lasso. Don't use it as a way to insult our American soccer minds.
That's right. What about James Cook? I'm looking at James Cook. What do we think? Is he going to survive the draft? It's very unlikely now that Singletary's gone. I mean,
didn't they sign Dameon Harris?
Devin Singleton would be a great running back.
So the date, it's interesting because I did a podcast with Jordan McNamara last night, and Jordan McNamara was very happy about the Dameon Harris signing with Buffalo, as I am for James Cook's prospects this season. But he put a Twitter poll up, and it was, does Dameon Harris replacing Devin Singletary help or hurt James Cook's value for next year? And it was the majority of the responses were negative towards Cook, where they think that this hurt, in which it makes no sense. So you take away a guy like Devin Singletary, who's got 50 targets every single season. Yeah. He moves on for a guy who doesn't get targets.
What do you want?
Yeah.
You want them just to go full Atlanta and not sign anybody? That's such a small likelihood, especially with a team that has very few needs. It's like with the Bengals. You really think that Mixon's going to survive the draft? Are you insane? After they let Pirine go? Like, best case scenario really was them bringing back Devin Singletary. That was the impossible dream. They did upgrade their running back, but it's a delicate dance in the offseason who you're rooting for to land where to affect a guy's dynasty value moving forward. I think that Dameon Harris is just good enough, but not quite good enough for it to be great.
Hey, but guys, I just want to ask you something here, Theo. I think you're right here is that they do different things, so they kind of fit together. What I'd be worried about, and this is what I was worried about with any running back that signs there, does this hurt the touchdown projection for Josh Allen with Dameon Harris? Do they now have a guy who they consider a banger at the goal line, and does this take 2.5, 3 touchdowns off Josh Allen's rushing projection?
So it's interesting because I think if they're sitting in coaches' meetings, they might say, hey, we're going to run Josh Allen less around the goal line. We're going to prolong his career. We're going to make sure he's healthy for the playoffs. But when you're deep in the shit and it's the fourth quarter and you need a touchdown, you're going to go with Josh Allen around the goal line. At the end of the day, these coaches want to win games, and they have self-preservation, and you have a weapon of mass destruction in Josh Allen. Even if you want to change stylistically, you don't with that guy. So sure. I think, to me, like Matt brings up the NFL draft, like they still can go and draft a running back. Dameon Harris gives them protection where if they're maybe not able to land a running back that's impactful, they don't feel the pressure to do so. They don't have to overpay. Dameon Harris is an effective runner. I think that if they don't land a running back in the draft, I think there's a chance he could hit like that 800-yard Devin Singletary number. But he does give James Cook the opportunity to be utilized a lot more as a receiver. And I think that's what we want from James Cook. So Devin Singletary, 50 targets. I'd like to see them go to James Cook. I do worry about a nightmare scenario where we don't have any running back we can use next year from Buffalo. If they mix in Nyheim Hines more, and you have Dameon Harris, and you have James Cook, and it's kind of a week-to-week nightmare with like a 40-30-30 split. But I think that James Cook is the most explosive guy there. He profiles the best, and it's a guy that they use draft capital on. So I am cautiously optimistic about James Cook, but like Matt said, I mean, he could get dusted in that draft. And Matt, does it seem like this could be the Bijan landing spot? Buffalo hasn't added any significant offensive guy. You get the smoke screen with Dameon Harris. They didn't commit that much money to him, and they go and get Bijan Robinson in the draft, and they get a real game changer on that offense. I don't know.
Harris lowers the probability of that happening. He does lower that probability just enough where I would say probably not. Yeah, probably not. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think it was great for Devin Singletary, for James Cook, because this is actually fine. This is a guy that you could look at and say, well, we have our thunder and lightning. Like, this is why would we want to burn another draft pick, a high draft pick, an early draft pick, a first-round pick on a running back? We got a great bargain in Dameon Harris. That would be like, hey, just you throwing out a birthday gift before you even unwrap it. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's definitely just like a dreaming scenario, just trying to think out here. And I'm wondering what your opinion is of the Devin Singletary landing spot, where Dameon Pierce truthers seem to be kind of brushing this one aside, and they're kind of okay with Devin Singletary landing in Houston. If I'm a Dameon Pierce manager, I'm not happy about this at all.
Yeah, you knew somebody was going to be there, though, right?
Someone's going to go somewhere. Okay,
100%.
Listen, Theo, what do you want? You're falling into the same trap these people do. What do you think is going to happen? They have no one behind him. Rex Burkhead is 77 years old. And you don't think that David Johnson? What? You don't think they're going to bring guys in? And wouldn't it be great if they brought in a small, slow running back who was only productive because he was on Buffalo? If you're a Dameon Pierce fan, you're happy. If you're a Devin Singletary equity holder, you're also happy.
You're
fans? Also happy because you want to go somewhere where you can lock in the number 2 job. They're not going to go running back in the first round. We know that. Probably not going to go running back in the second round. That would be very early. So now Devin Singletary has the clear backup job locked up. So it's good news for him. That's best case scenario for Singletary. I mean, he's a fringe player.
Yeah.
And now they're bringing that. Now they're bringing in a veteran. That's one less player that they would potentially be drafting. So it's great news. I don't understand. You're the people that are celebrating this, the Dameon Pierce fans, are right. Theo Gremminger is wrong.
This one, I do worry about. So Dameon Pierce
Then
catches
you're
30
just a
balls as a rookie.
worrier. Then you're just a professional worrier because do you realize how many running backs were available in free agency this year? Do you know how many teams are in the NFL, Theo? Do you know how many quality running backs are available in the NFL draft?
Well, I would have rather seen a thumper.
Why don't we just create a team? You know what we'll do, Theo? Let's all pool our resources. We'll buy a team, and we'll sign 17 running backs and put them all on that team so all your guys don't have any touch competition. How about that, Theo?
I would love that. I would love that for my dynasty teams.
Remember, guys, Pierce hit a wall big time last year with down the stretch when you needed him the most, right? If you had made the playoffs, Pierce was not good. He needed a backfield mate, and I don't think this is bad for him. But instead of being like RB14, he's probably more like RB20.
They're going to give Singletary some junk carries between the 20s. He's not a threat.
Right. It's actually an enhancement. This is exactly what you wanted if you were a Pierce guy. You knew a 4th-round running back was going to get a backfield mate. This is good.
Write this moment down on this show. This is as wrong as Theo's ever been.
Right. Circle this one, guys.
Mount Wrongmore.
Dameon Pierce. Oh yeah, this is
my whoa, Alan.
This is my Mount Wrongmore moment. Is
Alan, no
Dameon
stop
Pierce,
signs?
Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce. That's
wait. Can we just explain what listen, this is classic talk radio with Alan. Look at it. Listen to him. Theo's almost always dead on.
I agree.
He happens to be moderately wrong about the implications for Dameon Pierce vis-a-vis Devin Singletary, and you're running out to put him on Mount Wrongmore.
Exaggeration for clarification. That's all it was.
I just think that there's a chance he doesn't grow as a receiver this year, and I think 30 receptions if we want Dameon, like you brought up, like Dameon Pierce getting to running back 15 instead of running back 24, that does make a difference to me.
Yes.
And I think that him growing as a receiver, it's limited with Devin Singletary there. Matt, you bring up, getting some garbage carries, but I think potentially a split in terms of the running back targets, that doesn't get me excited for Dameon Pierce. I already have unloaded a lot of my Dameon Pierce, so I'm not really exposed to it too much, but I have been drafting a little bit of Dameon Pierce in best ball. Devin Singletary just seems to be more like a kind of a nuisance guy to have around. It's going to be a little bit more of a split backfield than I think some people think.
I have a great dichotomy for you guys because both of these guys are now win-now running backs. Two very different types of win-now running backs, but yet very similar. The biggest difference being age, play style, similar. Derrick Henry versus Dameon Pierce in Dynasty.
Give me Derrick Henry all day long this year. I mean, if I could flip it, I'm flipping it because you have the 4th-round running back I already don't like the draft capital of Dameon Pierce. I already don't like the potential for a split. And I already don't like Houston's offense this year. Pierce is going to be like a purgatory player that doesn't like elevate my fantasy team. He might be a guy who, finishes as RB23, and he's a guy that gets starts, but he doesn't impact my team. Whereas Derrick Henry, in his best case scenario this year, he's still giving you like that 17 points per game. He's a volume monster. He's seeing his same amount of carries. So if I have a chance to flip kind of a fringe dynasty asset for a 1-year guy like Henry, and my team can support it, my team's good enough to win this year, I'm making that trade all day long. And
Matt
also, you're telling me I can do it before the NFL draft too, Matt. Where we say Houston might not get a day 2 guy, but let's say that they add a intriguing day 3 guy, like they go back to the 4th round and draft another running back to compete with Singletary and Pierce. There's a chance that there's a guy that we say, hey, that's not a worst case scenario for this XYZ running back we like in the 4th round. He landed in Houston. He can beat out Pierce in a year. He can beat out Devin Singletary in a year. Derrick Henry, we do know this year.
Ibanakanda?
That would get us excited. Israel Abanikanda in the 4th round. We could talk ourselves into that one right there.
Ibanakanda. That's
Big
what you're
time.
talking about, right?
I would love that one.
Yeah.
I mean, they keep going back to that 4th round to try to get someone to back up Derrick Henry. With the Hassan Haskins, where he was a later round pick, and they've done it. They had the Dontrell Hilliard types over there. So, I mean, you get excited about these guys they draft late, like the Chargers try to do it right with Josh Kelly, and then with Spiller. It's just sometimes that these guys just end up being RB3 in purgatory on a real NFL roster and end up clogging the back of your dynasty roster too. So it's an interesting though, but I want to put Theo on Mount Rightmore, by the way, with his call of Derrick Henry over Dameon Pierce, and I think that's going to be a controversial take, even though it's a sane and sober take, and it's someone who likes winning versus someone who just likes the sexy roster syndrome.
Well, I took some flack I moved a bunch of Pierce shares, and I like to put my trades out there. I have full disclosure on them. You can read about them on Player Profiler, and I put them out on Twitter. And I moved a Pierce share in like a big package to get, this was a while ago, to get a 101. And people started harping on, Dameon Pierce is this great dynasty asset. And I do think he's a polarizing player, because I think some people do view him as a better asset than he is in the dynasty streets. I think at Player Profiler,
he's a 4th round pick who broke out as a rookie, who doesn't
100%.
have a receiving profile that can buoy him in the league. He's very
spot on.
Dangerous.
You were absolutely spot on this, Matt, and you've seen your fair share of Dameon Pierce's come up and then fade to obscurity. But I think that there are people who are Dameon Pierce truthers out there. There
You
really are.
Vault him. They were insisting we vault him last year, and we refused to vault him. Like, one of the consistent things about our rankings, I can tell you, is that you've always had Derrick Henry ahead of Dameon Pierce. Because why would I ever go Dameon Pierce? What the upside for Dameon Pierce is nothing close to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry might give us a year or two, but so could Pierce.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like Antonio Gibson all over again, right? The not great draft capital guy that you're vaulting up. I know it's different profile of player, but had a good rookie year. People looking at him as a 1st round startup pick, and then it's
the best example of all time. His name's Trey Mason. His
Nah.
name is Trey Mason.
Oh, Trey Mason, right?
Trey Mason was a 3rd round pick in best ball for the Rams. This was back when best ball. This was before Underdog. This was where you drafted on something called an MFL 10 was where you did best ball.
I still play there.
Right. So that was the original. And 3rd round pick, and the team drafts Todd Gurley. Bye-bye. And that was the last we saw of Trey Mason. Right? So who's left to sign? Is Fournette, Zeke, Kareem Hunt? Who else am I missing?
Those are the big 3 names, at least.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Because the tight ends have signed, right? Dalton Schultz has signed. Gerald Everett's still in the wind.
the running back that we've talked about, Tyler Allgeier, in past weeks, he's dodged a lot of bullets here.
Oh my god,
guys! And he's gonna get dusted on draft night, but we're still we're still sitting here, and he hasn't. The competition has not been brought in.
I'm
Dameon
gonna go
Pierce had
Kendre
competition.
Miller. I think Kendre Miller to Atlanta. I think that's what's gonna happen. So that's my bet on that. So he's eventually going to get vaporized. If he doesn't, I mean, good for him and Theo. That'll be his ticket to Mount Rightmore. Absolutely. At tight end, Schultz is gone. Waller is a giant. What do we think of these two moves?
Gesicki signed as well.
Yeah, with New England.
Yeah. So the Schultz one, it's
so Gesicki's dead. How dead is Schultz? He's not as dead as Gesicki.
He's not as dead, and he's falling into actually a decent spot, but again, it's going to be a significant downgrade. He's had very good touchdown efficiency the last 2 seasons. You could see that go way down. A lot of his fantasy production has been buoyed by him finding the end zone. Like, Schultz is a guy, to me, he's a tight end too. I think that, like, he's, to me, I at the end of the day, at the end of the summer, I won't have him in the top 12 tight ends.
What are the Houston Texans doing? When you have that roster, why sign Schultz?
And why sign Robert Woods?
What are they doing?
It's weird. And Singletary, for that matter, is like, those get these kind of like,
wouldn't
like,
you
these
want
are the wrong
upside
kind of
if you're the
signing.
Texans? Wouldn't you just want to be hogging all the upside? Why wouldn't they sign like a Chark?
They want guys that are going to at least give their rookie quarterback credible veteran presence. Now, again, I'm not saying that's what you should do. That's what they are doing. They're giving what they consider high floor players to support a rookie's development. And I can tell by the look on your face, you look how most of us feel. Right, you don't want that. The Shark not signing yet is one of the more mysterious things.
He's holding out for more money, right?
Right, because he's the cream of the crop. He's the Panthers are looking at him. Last I read.
Yeah, Panthers. I think that still might happen. And you're right. I think Shark is kind of waiting in the weeds, and I think he'll get a nice. He might have the same deal as he had last year. You know, he at the worst case he'll take a big 1-year contract. More likely than not, it's more. But yeah, the tight ends, it's Schultz is definitely, you gotta downgrade him. Gesicki, it's not a great landing spot. I'm trying to, again, for Mac Jones, I like it though, because you replace Jonnu Smith with Mike Gesicki. For Mac Jones, it's a nice
Isn't Mac
move.
Jones a kind of a sneaky winner in free agency?
Yes,
Big time. He's in my free agent winners article I'm working on, Mac Jones is definitely one of them. You can tell, like, this is what they're doing in New England. They're trying to make the offense better. They're making small moves here. And again, it was a lateral move. Matt prefers Jacoby Myers to Juju, but they lose Jacoby Myers and they go and get Juju. It's a pretty lateral move. And then they add a receiving threat at tight end. Doesn't necessarily help our fantasy teams, but it does help Mac Jones, the Gesicki signing.
Yeah, the biggest upgrade for Mac Jones is the Bill O'Brien signing. They at least have a real offensive
100%.
coordinator.
Yeah, big time. Big time.
Well, at least a gigantic chin.
And wasn't Bill O'Brien at Penn State the same time as Gesicki? Did that have something to do with the signing?
He recruited him to Penn State, and then he left to take the job, but they have a very good relationship. That Gesicki was a massive recruit from New Jersey to Penn State, and O'Brien apparently has a very good relationship with him, so I'm sure that kind of weighed on Gesicki's decision to go reunite.
Well, there you go. So maybe he could have some fantasy value if you're someone who, especially in redraft leagues, who just doesn't draft tight ends until the 18th round. Maybe that's one of the guys that could end up being like tight end 14 to tight end 9-ish. I mean, just based on touchdowns, because it's whoever gets the 10 touchdowns ends up in that tight end tier.
Some would say that Gesicki is better in best ball.
Ah,
Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out PlayerProfiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.